Now we start to use the Geo-Scatter add-on to scatter the other elements. First of all, to completely hide the horizon, we are going to add some trees around the terrain. So open the trees collection, copy-paste them into your project. Move them back over here, then press M to set them into a new collection and call it trees. Now, in order to scatter them properly on the ground, we can go on with making a mask. To do that, make sure the ground is selected and isolated to have an easier time. Then head over to the data panel. Here we can see we have a vertex group that we have made before. So click on the plus icon to make a new one and rename it to trees. Then make sure you are not in rendered view because it will be really hard for Blender to process. And from here, switch into weight paint mode. So press numpad 7 to go into top view. Let's adjust the brush. Make sure the weight and the strength are set on 1. The radius, it depends on you. Well, I guess the radius is too much, so I decrease that. Yeah, this seems nice. And let me exit the isolation mode, jump back into object mode, and also select the electric towers. Now isolate. Select the ground plane and go into weight paint. Now start to paint on the left and the right side of the ground. And don't forget, these areas that we are painting will be the areas that the trees will be generated. And here is a tip. There is a high probability that you will have so much lags right now. So if you want to have a fast viewport, go to the modifiers panel and here disable the subdivision surface, and we also can get rid of this weighted normal. Now if you give it a shot, it is much faster. Add-on to scatter the other elements. First of all, to completely hide the horizon, we are going to add some trees. So this is totally fine and we can always get back to it and adjust it. Then from the toolbar menu, and if you don't have it open, press T to open it. Pick the blur tool, the setting is just fine. And start to slightly blur the edges to make a gradient transition, which will give the final result a more natural look. To do that, make sure the ground is selected and isolated to have an easier time. Then head over to the data panel. Here we can see we have a vertex group that we have made, something like that. Now before scattering the trees, we should consider where we want to scatter. That includes the left and the right side, and also the front part. For the front part, instead of simply painting over it, we can do something else to get a better result. So switch into edit mode, shift right click here to bring the 3D cursor over here. Then press shift A to add a plane. Let's press numpad 3 to go into side view. Then press G, Z, move it down. Again, go into top view, press S, X, and scale it up as big as the ground. Then press S, Y to scale it up on the Y axis. You can go even higher. Yeah. Let's move it back a bit. Go to side view, press R to rotate it like so. The trees will be generated. Don't worry, we can always adjust that. By doing that, we will both hide the horizon and also make more grounds to scatter trees. Now return to the weight paint. Pick the brush tool and start to paint on the new plane. Since we have added this plane in the edit mode, it is already part of this ground plane. So start to paint over the new plane. But you may notice it is not working properly like before. The reason is this plane has only 4 vertices, meaning not that much of a geometry. You see, whatever you try over here, you cannot paint. But if you go to the vertex, here you can paint this way. Press T to open it. It is not necessary to add more geometry to this plane. You just simply keep painting over these vertices to make it red. But if your PC can handle that, let me go back, switch into edit mode. Over here, press Ctrl R to add an edge loop, a horizontal one. Click to accept, then open the subdivide menu and set the number of cuts on 10. Then add another edge loop, this time a vertical one. Left and accept it, then set the number of cuts on 50. Instead of now again switch back into weight paint, and if you try to paint, there you have it. Again, I say it is not necessary at all. So just simply paint over it. So something like that is totally fine. And the good point about this part is you don't have to be precise at all. Now go back into object mode, press N to open the side menu, and from here, pick the Geo-Scatter add-on. For the emitter, pick the ground plane. Then press A. Let's exit the isolation mode and select all the trees or each of them that you like to scatter. Open the density scatter, and before scattering, to prevent Blender from crashing, decrease the instances drastically. Set it on 0.05. Base adjust that. It is still a lot of instances. And here is a point. If your PC cannot handle that, make sure to switch into solid view and disable all these collections, electric towers, pools, cables, burned vehicles, or anything else. Then to scatter them, simply click on Scatter Objects. But you may notice it is not working and hit OK. They have been scattered all over the ground. And if your PC cannot handle that, turn off the scatter for now. You try over here. So scroll down, open the culling mask, and enable vertex group. From here, pick the vertex group that we have just made it, which is called trees. Seems like it is working the vice versa. So to invert it, enable the reverse button. And there you have it. Open distribution. Here there is the instances property that we had set on 0.05. If you want more trees, you can increase it. Let's get over here and take a look at the new plane. And as you can see, the trees have been generated according to the normal of the plane, which is not what we are looking for. To fix that, under rotation, set the align normal on local Z, and that will fix the issue. Now take a look at here, to this part. We can see the horizon among these three to a high value. It is not necessary to fix that, but if you like, follow as I do. Make sure the ground plane is selected, press Tab to go into edit mode. Pick the edge selection tool and select the first edge over here. Then get to the other side, hold down the Control key and click on this edge, which will select all the edges on the nearest pass. Then press E, X, extrude it on the X-axis like so. Crashing, decrease the... Now the trick is to move it down, 0.05. It is ST. Now we have covered the horizon to a high value. And if we switch into weight paint, it inherits the data of the location from where it has been extruded, which is totally in our favor. So let's get back to the object mode. So let's get to the edit mode. Make sure nothing is selected. Hover your mouse over the new plane, press L to select the entire mesh. If we take a look at here, I guess we should move it down a little bit. Yeah, this seems better. Now to help having a faster viewport, scroll down where we can pick a placeholder. Enable display as, and let's go with this one. And we should switch into solid view to take a look at it. Set X, Y, Z on 2. Here, yeah, this looks pretty fine. Now let's rename this scatter to trees. If you want, then turn it off and also turn off the trees collection. Now open the natural elements blend file, the tree debris. Here we can see we have some different objects. So select the branches on the right side, Ctrl C to copy them into your main project. That will fix the issue. Now take a look, move them back over here, press M, set them into a new collection, call it Tree Debris 1. If you like, make sure all of them are selected or each of them that you like, and scatter them using the density scatter. Selection tool, we can increase the instances and set it on 0.1. Right, don't worry, we will fix that. Then under rotation, switch align normal into local Z. This will give a better result. Enable random rotation. We can go for a high value for the tilt, 1080, down. Then enable default scale, cause right now they are huge. Set the uniform on 0.2. Much better. And to give some randomness, enable random scale. Set X, Y, and Z on 0.22. And if you don't like this kind of distribution, let's go up. Here under distribution, we have a property called seed. If you change this seed, you will get a different pattern. I guess we should move it down a little bit. Yeah, I think I go with this one. This looks pretty nice. So here is a point. The ground where the trees are located is barely visible. So we can take advantage of the culling mask to exclude those areas. This will help us to have a faster viewport, by the way. So let's enable the trees scatter, set X, Y, Z. And as I mentioned, we don't need the debris on the trees areas. And we are going to use the culling mask to exclude those areas. And this time a Bezier curve. So Shift S, cursor toward origin. Then press Shift A in the curve at the Bezier curve. Here we can, let's move it up to have a better look at it. Press Tab to go into edit mode. Press A to make sure all the vertices are selected. Then press X to delete vertices. Press numpad 7 to go into top view. And then from the toolbar menu, pick the draw tool. 1. We want the debris to cover this centering part, so simply draw a curve like so. And don't worry, you can always tweak that. So press G, Z, move it up to somewhere around here, and as I mentioned, we can pick any vertex and adjust it like so. But I guess this is totally fine. So jump back into object mode, right click, set origin to geometry. In the culling mask, enable Bezier area. And for the object, choose the Bezier curve. As right now it is working the opposite, so enable the reverse property. Now we are talking. So we don't have any instances over here. We have them in the centering part, and that's totally fine. Nice. Enable display as this kind of distribution. For the placeholder, pick this one. Under distribution, X, Y, and Z on 5. Change. So let's rename this scatter to trees debris 1. Turn off the scatter and also the collection. Get back to the natural elements blend file, and this time pick the objects on the left. Copy them into your main project. Move them over here. Press M, set them into a new collection, call it trees debris 2. Trees with them selected, scatter them using the density scatter. Again, I mentioned turn off all the scatters until we make the necessary adjustments. But I'm going to keep them on because I want you to see the changes in real time. Now select the Bezier curve, go to top view, press Shift D to make a duplicate, right click to drop it in the same place. Press SX to scale it down like so. To get something like this, because we want this scatter to only cover the area of the railing. So if it's needed, go into edit mode and adjust these vertices. So this seems totally fine. To cover, then from the culling mask, enable Bezier area, and for the object, choose the new Bezier curve base and obviously invert it. Z, we can increase the instances to get more of them. Let's go for 2. Then head over to the scale, enable both default and random scale. It's totally fine. For the default scale, let's decrease the factor X, Y, and Z on 0.4. In the culling mask, enable is still so big, we have the uniform. Let's set it on 0.2. Yeah, this is much better now. Then for the random scale, decrease it to 0.1. So I go into edit mode, select these vertices, and I adjust them like so. And you see it works in real time. Yeah, I want to have these debris only on the railing area. Now let's get to the rotation and enable random rotation and set the tilt on 1080. And also now they light on the ground much better. But I guess they have been dipped into the ground too much. So under offset, which is here, we can enable transform. And here slightly increase the Z location to move them up. Something like 0.045. Density scatter. Let's pick a placeholder for that until we make the necessary adjustment. The first one seems to be nice. On because I want you to see, set the scale on 3. Now select. Now we can go on with adding some grass. So let's rename this last scatter to trees debris 2. Disable the collection. and also its scatter. To then open the grass blend file. We have two types of grass over here, so select these two and copy them into your main project. Move them over here, set them into a new collection and call it grass 1. Then from the column, make sure both of them are selected and scatter them. Well, we can also scatter using this plus icon. We can definitely use some more grass, so increase the instances to 0.3. Then let's give them the same calling mask. So enable Bezier area, and for the object, pick the first Bezier curve, which is this bigger one, 0.4. And as a matter of fact, invert it. Uniform. Let's set it. The scale of them looks pretty fine. Offset is also fine. Let's pick a placeholder. Set it to 0.1. Let's go with this one. Go into edit mode, set the scale on 0.4. Let's rename this scatter to grass 1. You see it works in real. Then disable the scatter and also the collection. Now add the other type of the grass to the project. Move them back, set them into a new collection, call it grass 2. And make sure all of them are selected and click on the plus icon to scatter them. First, we should adjust the scaling because they are so tiny. So enable default scale and set the uniform on 5. Enable transform. Now we can see them much better. Also enable random scale. Move them up. 0.33 looks pretty fine. We can of course use more instances. So let's set it on 1. Give it the same Bezier curve as the calling mask. Set the scale on and don't forget to invert it. Now let's pick a placeholder. Let's rename this last scatter to this one is for the trees. So we should decrease the scale to a high value, 0.01. Now we can go ahead and from the natural elements collection add leaves. But before that, don't forget to rename this scatter to grass 2. Disable the scatter and also its collection. Then pick the leaves, which are these. Copy them into your project. Move them back. Set them into a new collection, call it leaves, instances to 0.3, and then scatter them on the ground. Same calling, give them the same Bezier curve as the calling mask. First, they are so tiny, so let's enable default scale and set the uniform on 4. Invert it. Enable random scale, set the factor on 0.22, which gives them a nice variation in size. Let's go up and increase the instances to 0.5 to have some more leaves. Now if we zoom in, in the rendered view. And don't forget that we are using the adaptive subdivision. In the final render, it will look much better, even better than this. We can notice that the leaves are not fully set on the ground. The reason is the displacement map. Well, in solid view, it is totally fine. But since the displacement map works in the rendered view, we have this minor issue. To fix that, under offset, enable transform. We should slightly decrease the Z location, something like negative 0.015. This really looks pretty fine. Negative 0.02. Yeah, that's better now, or you can go even lower. Negative 0.04. So that's fine. Let's get down and pick a placeholder. Now let's pick a placeholder. This one seems to be fine. Set the scale on 0.15. Then rename the scatter to leaves 0.01. Now we can turn off the scatter and also the collection. And finally, for the last scatter, we are going to add some shrubs. So from the shrubs blend file, copy the assets into your project. The scatter and all, set them into a new collection and call it shrubs. Please click on the plus icon to scatter them. Too much, decrease the instances to 0.02. The default scale is fine. To give some variation, simply enable random scale. 0.33 looks to be fine. Let's give it a placeholder. Enable default scale. We can go for this one. Enable random scale and increase the scale to 0.8, which gives them a nice variation. Yeah, I like that. Rename the scatter to bush as to 0.5 and turn off the collection. Now we can go on with making anomalies. You're going to love this part. So the first one, as you can already guess, will be placed here on this hole that we made before. And by the way, after we are done with the process of anomalies, we will take care of the railing. It is intact for the time being, so we should actually mess it up. Now make sure to disable all the scatters and also all the unnecessary collections. To fix that, under Offset, enable Transform. We should slightly decrease the Z location. Shift right click over the hole to bring the 3D cursor over here. Then press Shift A in the mesh and an icosphere. Don't touch anything, open the bottom menu and increase the subdivisions to 4. Move it up a little bit, of course you can always adjust it. Fine. Let's get. Then for the scale of it, set the dimensions on 4.58, that could be fine. Right click to shade Auto Smooth. Then to give it some thickness, head over to the modifiers panel. In the generate, give it the solidify modifier. Set the offset on 1 so that the thickness will be generated outward. So if I go to the wireframe mode, here you can see what happens. Set them into a new collection and then increase the thickness to 0.095. Yeah, seems nice. Now let's make a nice material for it, and this is the whole process. The material is going to be a bit complex, but we will cover everything. So head over to the shader panel, then make a new material for it, rename it to Anomaly. We can go for this, delete principal BSDF, add a transparent and a refraction node. Increase the scale to 0.8. Yeah, I like that. To combine them together, add a mix shader and make the connection like so. Now we can go on with making anomalies. Now we should add some depths, so we can use a handy node called layer weight. This hole that we made before, plug facing into color. Set the blend property on 0.6. I guess this was the number I used in the main project. Then set the IOR on 0.85. It already looks pretty cool. Add a color ramp between them. Drag the white slider to the left almost to the middle. Then for the black slider, enter this hex code. FA, then add 6F. This layer weight works magic if you know how to use it properly. Almost a year ago, I have made a material with it. You cannot believe what it does. You just cannot believe. I will share it later. Let's get to the complicated part. Duplicate the mix shader and drop it after the refraction. For the bottom shader input, add a glass BSDF and a layer weight before that. Use facing and plug it into IOR. Let's increase the blend to 0.88. Now we should break this nice composure apart. So add a noise texture and plug factor into normal. 25. With it selected, press Ctrl T as you already know what it does. Increase the scale to 1.45. Then on the noise texture, decrease the roughness to 0.3. Panel, to add a nice variation, drop a Voronoi texture on the connection. Make sure to use the distance output. Set the scale on 3.5 and detail on 0. We want to use the noise texture and the Voronoi texture as the bumps and distortions. So simply add a bump node after that. Make sure to use the height input. Set the strength on 0.23, then set the distance and the filter width on 1. Looking great, it is getting together. Finally, enable invert. To have more control, you can add a color ramp before the bump node. You can play around with the sliders to get a different look. 85. Then add a mask node and drop it after the noise texture. Switch it into multiply and decrease the value to 0.26. Now to wrap it up, we should make a mask to use it as the factor. So select the Voronoi texture, color ramp, bump node and the layer weight. This layer, duplicate them, move them up over here. Plug the mapping node into the duplicated Voronoi texture. Then plug the facing into factor. You can see what it does. The Voronoi texture is fine. On the color ramp, drag the black slider to the right. Duplicate the mix. On the bump node, decrease the strength to 0.14 and disable invert. Now add a color ramp at the end and adjust the sliders like so. First, let's decrease the blend to 0.36. We can always adjust that. We actually lose a lot of the effect, but here we have the color ramp. Let's move the black slider to the right, then the white slider to the left. Yeah, we get the effect back. Let's take a look at it in the camera view. It looks nice. And now we can increase the blend if needed. Let's see. Back. 0.8. No, that's too much. 0.4, I guess. Yeah. 0.4 is fine. And done. Now we can start scattering it on the zone. So make sure to unhide the electric towers and the electric pools collections to have a better look at the area. Then go to top view, make sure the anomaly is selected, press Alt D to make an instance and move it towards the first electric tower. Place it somewhere around here. Move it down a little bit to sell the effect that this tower has been askewed because of this anomaly. That looks pretty cool. We should of course scale it up. Let's get to the dimensions and increase them to 5.5 maybe. Let's go for 6. So let's go for 7. Yeah, this seems nice. Then add maybe 3 of them on this side. Just give them some variation in size. There is no need to rotate them because they are all just icospheres. Duplicate them, move them up. So something like that looks nice. We can of course add one of them close to this railing. You can something like that. Another one over here. Ramp, drag the black, and finally this one, which will be set somewhere around here. This one is going to be so big, which will make it the main anomaly among all of them. So this time press Shift D to make a duplicate. First, let's decrease the blend, move it up and make it huge. We can always adjust that. 21. Yeah, this seems nice so far. But for the main one, we should make some adjustments, especially for the material. But before that, here is another cool looking option. Let's get over here and select this anomaly, which was the first one actually. Shift D, make a duplicate and drop it in the same place. Decrease the dimensions. Let's go for 2.1. Yeah, seems nice. Then open the shader editor. Make its material a unique one. Duplicate the material to make it a unique one. Rename it to Anomaly 2. To have a let's make some changes. First, select the top set of nodes that controls the factor. Simply remove all of them. Then move up the bottom set of nodes. Place it somewhere around. Hold down Alt, click and drag on the glass BSDF to separate it. Plug Fresnel output into factor. We should of course delete the refraction setup and instead of that, use the glass BSDF. Then for the bottom shader input, add a transparent node. So let's go for 7. Remove this mix shader and the transparent and make the connection like so as you can see. Let's get to the bump node. Only increase the strength all the way to 1. Add a color ramp and drop it before the glass BSDF. So something like that. Plug color into color. Now we can add colors. So for the white slider, enter this hex code 81CB, then add 4F. And before continuing, here is a very cool trick. If you decrease the blend on the layer weight, see what happens. This is a totally different effect. If you want to have something seeker, a seeker core in the middle, you can do that. Now for the black slider, enter this hex code FFEB B0FF. This seems nice, which will give us something like this, which is really natural and organic. Then drag it to the right a little bit to use the yellow color more than the blue one. And that's what I'm talking about. So done. Let's get to the big boy. The material of this one is going to be fantastic. You have to watch it for yourself to realize what I mean. Seems nice? Then open the shader editor. Make its material a unique one. Duplicate the material to make it a unique one. Rename it to Anomaly 2. Let's make some changes. First, select the top set of nodes that controls the factor. Simply remove all of them. Then move up the bottom set of nodes. Hold down Alt, click and drag on the glass BSDF to separate it. Plug Fresnel output into factor. Delete the refraction setup and instead of that, use the glass BSDF. Then for the bottom shader input, add a transparent node. Remove this mix shader and the transparent and make the connection like so as you can see. Let's get to the bump node. Increase the strength all the way to 1. Add a color ramp and drop it before the glass BSDF. Plug color into color. Now we can add colors. So for the white slider, enter this hex code 81CB, then add 4F. And before continuing, here is a very cool trick. If you decrease the blend on the layer weight, see what happens. This is a totally different effect. If you want to have something S.T.A.L.K.E.R, a S.T.A.L.K.E.R core in the middle, you can do that. Now for the black slider, enter this hex code FFEB B0FF, which will give us something like this, which is really natural and organic. Then drag it to the right a little bit to use the yellow color more than the blue one. And that's what I'm talking about. So done. Let's get to the big boy. The material of this one is going to be fantastic. You have to watch it for yourself to realize what I mean.